Hello, hello. How you doing?
Good afternoon.
Huh?
Turning everything on.
This is not a harbinger of the day.
I know, right? I know, right? Good afternoon, and welcome to the January 14, 2026 informal meeting of the Savannah-Chatham County Public Board of Education. This is an information-only meeting. We do not take any votes. And first on our agenda today is Ms. Stacy Taylor.
Good morning again, if it's morning. If not, good afternoon. I've lost track of time. Right. Good day. All right. So today I will walk you through how the strategic plan for 2031 is being developed. And I do want to point out that instead of focusing on the technical details, today what I'll be sharing is our process and thinking behind how we're building or developing our plan. And I'm excited to highlight specifically how we're engaging or interacting with voices across the system to help inform the direction of our district over the next 5 years. And again, I'm super excited about this work. Today's update is focused on three things: how the plan is being developed, how stakeholders are being engaged to inform direction, and then I'll also share key milestones that are ahead. That in mind, I'd like to transition to some let's see. Hold on one second. All right, here we go. That in mind, I'd like to transition to a framework that you are familiar with. You've seen this before, so I won't walk you through each of the boxes, but this is just a reminder of how the roles in developing the strategic plan are intentionally defined, and they work in phases, and there is some overlap. And I want you to know that as we develop the plan, we're sticking to this framework as it relates to specific roles of the board, the administration, on not only the planning or development, but also the execution. As we build the plan, we're anchoring the work in a set of key questions. And really the questions center around where we are today, where do we want to be in 5 years, what needs to change for us to be where we aspire to be in 5 years, and then how will we measure the results or know that we were successful. These questions lead us to the type of plan that we want to create. So when we're thinking about the type of plan that we want to create, at its core, we want to build a plan that's system-wide, and we're being inclusive in design, beginning to bring in input from students, families, staff, communities, partners, and the board, of course. We're focused on system-wide ownership, so the plan is guided by priorities and decisions across the district, not just individual, the fun things to do or individual interests or departments, but across departments and schools, we want the plan to be system-wide and inclusive of the needs of our district. And we're working to build synergy and not silos around priorities. So again, I can't underscore enough, and I know I'm repeating it, but I'm repeating it for emphasis, that the plan will have this sense of shared ownership between departments, schools, community, as well as the board. As we began to develop the plan, we were intentional in our planning. We started with the end in mind, and we started by describing the district the way that we want to see it. And when I think about that, listening to some feedback from our superintendent, what we really walked away from is creating a fearless district that dares to dream and is willing to challenge the status quo. Alongside that vision, we are excited to define our values that will guide the district and move us from a place of compliance to creativity, take us away from isolation and bring us to interconnection, as well as move away from burnout to a plan where everyone sees themselves in it and creates this sense of belonging. Together, the vision and values serve as a safeguard for every decision we'll make throughout the life of the plan. And so now, with the vision of how we're approaching the plan, I'd like to talk a little bit about the phases that we're using to build the plan. So we started with inventory and ideation. So from there, we are moving into and currently are in engagement, and we're collecting feedback. After feedback is collected, we'll move into synthesis and ultimately implementation. While I name that we're working in phases and they are sequenced, you'll notice the diagram shows that there's overlap, allowing for data from each phase to inform and refine the next phase. I do want to point out that engagement is central to this planning work, and why it's so important is that it ensures that the plan reflects not only the qualitative data, but also the quantitative data and lived experiences of those in our system. The first step in this arc, as I have mentioned, is the piece around inventory. And we began by reviewing district-wide performance. So we looked at our district-wide data, and then you may recall we have commissioned several third-party reports. So we looked at the data that was provided in those third-party reports, and we've done this, take deep dive into where we are with the data with both our school and district leaders. And what we focused on was patterns. We looked at what wasn't working, what could be scaled, because we recognize that there are some things that are working that can be scaled, and where, as a system, on a system level, where change is needed. This allowed us to separate causes from surface level challenges, because we recognize there are some just surface level things that we can address immediately that we don't have to wait for the next plan to put our attention on. But we also recognize there's some root causes that have to be addressed in our larger ongoing 5-year plan. Once we understood the current conditions, we began, and this is one of my favorite spaces, but also a challenging space. Once we understood the conditions, we began to create the space to think differently. You may be familiar with the term blue sky thinking. We've used that occasionally. So we created, during this phase, a space for leaders to do just that, blue sky think. The thinking or the rationale is to move out of the day-to-day problem solving, so what we call the whirlwind. We wanted leaders to step aside and step out of the day-to-day problem solving and really get into a mind space or a space in which they could think creatively. And how we frame some of that thinking is by 2 big questions: what if and why not? And these questions forced us to think beyond the day-to-day and look at what we could actually become. This goal was not, and this is hard for some, including myself, it was not to come up with the answer or the solution, but to think about what's possible for our system. The other thing that I want you to look at and know, and you'll see here, this is a picture, we didn't just look in our system or other school systems, but what was also unique about this is we went to other industries outside of education to look and see what type of practices that they're doing specifically to transform their organization. Now let's talk a little bit about engagement. So we are gathering stakeholder feedback, and thank you all for participating. Many of you have either already participated or are scheduled to participate in one-on-one interviews. We've been intentional around our engagement, and we planned and are facilitating independent feedback collection. One of the things that was important is we want to create a space where those that are providing feedback feel safe to share their thoughts, ideas, and aspirations for the district. So we're working with a third-party partner to help us in leading this work. And we have designed and are leading communication that support accessibility. We recognize that the further we get in the plan, that how we communicate our direction will be important. So we're starting early. Tomorrow, actually, we have a meeting with SCAD. We're working with SCAD Serve as one of their course projects to be able to support how we actually communicate the plan out once we establish our priorities and we've designed the plan. And I think that's important to note. And you'll see that, again, we are going broad as it relates to who we're engaging. We have begun engagement with students, parents, again, board members, principals, and even elected officials. So we're excited. We've gotten responses from our elected and community officials, and they have also began to participate in some of our engagement opportunities. And we're doing this again, both through individual conversations as well as focus groups. We do plan to engage, I heard earlier a mention of community associations, faith-based groups and alike. We are planning to engage those groups as well in these focus group conversations because, again, we want internally and externally all of our stakeholders to see themselves and have ownership in the plan. We were excited right before we broke for the Christmas or the winter break. We had an opportunity to spend time with about 200 parents at Parent University, and we had some focus groups there. We've already had conversations with our Student Senate. We'll have ongoing conversations. Student senators are conducting voice sessions, so we know that every student across our system is not a senator, but the senators go back and facilitate and have been, I think we had a couple this week. They are going back and facilitating conversations with their peers in the school around what the aspirations are for our district. I also want to note that we are making a concerted effort to go across categories as it relates to employees. So we spent some time with our classified staff last week or this week, I can't remember because we've had a lot of conversations. We had a chance to actually go to Interchange. So we were there with those employees at Interchange, and we had an opportunity to host a focus group with them. And we're also engaging assistant principals. I'm excited about a lot because I feel like I'm saying that a lot, but I'm also excited about on Tuesday, January the 20th, we'll launch a system-wide survey that will go to students, families, staff, and community members. And we'll continue to engage principals throughout this process. So we started that engagement with principals, but we're going deeper with principals, not just individually, but also in groups. And so we're continuing to collect feedback from principals, families, and community members. One of the things that I do want to point out about how we are selecting or casting the net is we took a stratified approach. We wanted representation, again, from across employee group, community, sector, as well as grade bands, so that we have a representative sample so that we can really hear the voice of our district. After the input is collected, we will move into the synthesis, prioritization, and measurement phase. And this is where data and stakeholder voice really come together. So we'll synthesize the data that's collected to begin to surface and define themes as well as priorities, keeping in mind every priority that we have or that emerges, we need to be clear about how we will measure that success as it relates to a metric. And then also, I want to really underscore this whole notion of this planning work is not absent of our budget work. So as priorities emerge and we begin to define those priorities over time, we are clear that it has to be locked in step with the budget because our investments must support those things that we say are our priorities. And as a board, you play a very critical role as we move throughout both the engagement as well as prioritization phase. Your engagement will include, if you haven't already, you'll engage in the one-on-one interviews, and we'll also be providing emerging themes to you so that you can share feedback around emerging themes and priorities and share your thinking and thoughts as we inform where we will land on what will be our priorities as well as the themes that we'll focus on over the next 5 years. And certainly, once the plan is designed and developed, we will go into launching the plan, implementation, and monitoring. The plan will be carried out throughout every department and school level through action plans, and we'll monitor progress and look at specific metrics as well as leading indicators through obviously regular check-ins and making adjustments to strategies and investments. And so it kind of takes us back to the conversation that we had earlier around ROI, that once we establish the priorities and begin to invest the priorities, we're saying up front that we recognize that we will need to monitor them regularly and look at if we're getting the anticipated impact and be positioned to make adjustments as needed. I will pause there for feedback, questions, and
Ms. Hall?
discussion.
Stacey, I want to go back to the system-wide survey.
for a minute. We seem to be putting a lot of our marbles in that basket. And one thing I recall always doing when I was a principal was doing these surveys where I wanted the input of the staff at a faculty meeting. So everybody's there, they get it done, we're not taking their extra time, and they don't come dribble-drabbling in, and some never complete them at all. So if we're gonna do this at the schools, let's tell the principals.
Yes.
Do this at the faculty meeting and collect those surveys as they leave, and give them an apple or candy bar as they leave. That's right.
I can't speak to the cupcakes and apples, but what I can tell you for sure is that yesterday, Dr. Barnes sent an email to principals letting them know, similar to, I believe the superintendent sent an email to you, letting you know that the survey's coming out. So we've notified principals so they are aware that the survey will launch. And then what we're also providing and creating for principals is a strategic plan toolkit. And in that toolkit, it will have turnkey items around ways in which they can encourage participation, talking points, things that they could use if they want to share in their school publications, such as newsletters, emails, faculty meetings, sample agenda templates. So we're going to create those tools to support that. And one of the things that Dr. Barnes named in his email, is create the space and time for teachers and staff to be able to engage in this. So thank you for that, Dr.
Okay,
Barnes.
well, very good.
Mr. Grabowski.
You know, I'm going to have to talk about a strategic plan because I share your love for a good strategic plan. And your
People are
excitement.
excited, yes.
And your excitement. So two quick things. I love the blue sky thinking because that's, wonderful to help generate ideas and all sorts of great things. Sometimes blue sky thinking can be really challenging to accomplish in 5 years. So are we like looking at, and I also understand the need to have time constraints to move things forward. So is there somewhere in this process that might capture some of those bigger ideas?
So it's both.
Okay.
It's 5 years and beyond. And honestly, it's 1 year, 2 year, because what we're clear about is some of the things we won't get accomplished in the first year. And that was a cold splash of water for me, because if you really, really know me, I just like to get things done.
Sure.
And so I have a phenomenal superintendent who pointed out that's not going to happen in year one. I'm like, why not? She's like, we would spend year one getting ready to do this maybe in year 2, year 3. And we're also looking at some innovation grants to support potential work that we'll do in the strategic plan. And I was just having a conversation yesterday. Many of those grants are designed with a cycle that works beyond 1 year. So we would not expect that everything to be done in 1 year, but there are things beyond the 5 years.
I think funding streams have to be taken into consideration, also board policy. One of the things that I know that I have to do a better job of, and this is just an example of kind of casting a vision, and I'll just use the example around AI. We have no board policy right now that addresses artificial, we have no board policy. So a lot of how we decide to move forward will be guided by looking at board policy, because some policies may need to be added or modified based on where we decide to go with the strategic plan. So this is a multi-year, beyond 5-year process, for sure.
And I hope that with part of this process, that it will also have a very clear implementation and work plan.
Yes.
Yes.
Because that can be that's such an important piece to make sure that it actually moves
That was
forward.
part of the mention when we looked at mid-year adjustments. We're already having conversations about what is implementation going to look like, because we know we need to start thinking about now, how will we roll out, implement, and monitor.
And then last piece, love that we are engaging the larger community. That's absolutely critical. We do, there are lots of organizations that are doing lots of surveys, so it's really easy to get kind of lost.
Yes.
And the other thing is, I think people sometimes are like, what's the point? Like, how is this actually going to be used? So I think providing that feedback is really, really important. How are we going to keep the community engaged throughout this process and share the results of what we're doing? And I'll ask even a more pointed question. It might be old school to think about email, but, do we need to consider an email newsletter that someone could sign up for after they take the survey, so that then they see the results of the survey, they see how it's used in their strategic plan. Like, I think this is a good opportunity for us to be thinking about ways in which we can continue that engagement, particularly to the community outside of the schoolhouse and our families.
Definitely received. We are using email, and we're also launching a website. And on that website, we will provide live updates, but I definitely like the digital piece around the newsletter, because we are doing that internally, but we have not planned around it externally. And I want to just commend both my team and the comms team for turning that around. And we had some very tight deadlines. Yesterday, shouldn't say last night, the superintendent sent an email to all staff.
Last night.
I was like,
I was trying to respond to your emails at the same time.
Dr. Barnes, thank you for your afternoon email. So we started that, and we have a whole plan and a separate, I didn't go into it, but we have a whole separate strategy around communications, and we've been very diligent around that. And I do think you're right, so I will take that back to the team, and I'm sure we can turn that around, because we're doing that internally, but we
Yeah.
don't have a plan externally beyond the website.
I will say, I do feel like we have a pretty robust plan, and you all haven't seen it, and maybe I'll share it in this week's update to you all on Sunday, but of all of the engagement and how we then cycle back to, this is what we heard you say, and this is now how we plan to use it or not, and why. So we do have that cycle. Even today, I'm responding to events where I have to go to the media and talk about the plan. Like, there's a whole robust plan that you all are not seeing around all the engagement that we are planning to do. And to your point, giving it back to the community, this is what we heard. And we've seen success with that. We just took, and you all haven't seen the results of this either, but our mid-year culture survey, and we were worried about participation, but within the survey email, we said, this is how we've used your previous feedback, and I sent the email, so I got all the the reply back, which allowed me to engage with people. But it is important that we tell people how it's being used, or they think it's just a compliance activity.
Yep, absolutely. And I think underscoring the piece around the engagement, every group, should I say, not everyone, but every group will have 2 passes. So tell us what you want to see. Tell us if we got it right, because we are collecting a lot of data.
Okay, Dr. Hoskins-Brown?
Thank you. I appreciate the presentation, and I'm on slide 8, where you talk about the data inventory. I'm really, really happy to see the last bullet that says that you distinguished, the team worked to distinguish root
Yes.
causes from surface level symptoms, because sometimes we treat a symptom, but we're not coming to the actual cause of what it is. And so I'm grateful for that discernment. I don't have a lot of comments today, because I feel like we're going to dig deeply into this in the board accountability meeting later in the month. And I am thinking that we will connect all the things that we've talked about today, the return on investment, the budget process, and strategic planning, so that the public can see how we are thinking integratively and efficiently. But my question is, how are we engaging higher level community leaders, so military, colleges, chamber, other folks, to make sure that we have their insight, for one, and giving them opportunities to give us that insight, but then also making sure that they're aware of our planning, so they can leverage as they're doing their strategic planning.
Yes.
How are we doing that?
So we are reaching out, and again, we have gotten responses, but I think the part that we need to tighten is around making them aware of our plan, so that they're working in tandem and in support of each other. So I think we've done a pretty good job of reaching out and have had a good response. I think sometime this week we talked directly with the mayor. He came to Whitney. We sat down with him. We've heard from some of the commissioners. So I think we are engaging those groups. I do want to double tap with the team that we are talking to folks in higher ed. I'm not as sure about that one. I think we could revisit that. And then I do want to revisit how we're not just asking them what they think, but bringing them along. I think we can strengthen that.
I think that would be great. And the only other thing I would offer is that sometimes you have active stakeholders, people who know that they're stakeholders, And then you have latent or expectant stakeholders, people who ought to care, but maybe don't know that they care or don't know that they should care. And sometimes we have to anticipate who those people are. The best example I can think of, or the classic example, is when we were going to close Hodge. We talked to all the parents who were at Hodge. We didn't talk to the people whose kids weren't yet at Hodge. So when we actually implemented it 2 years ago, there was like this huge response. So as you're finishing up your engagement, the meetings, and the conversations that you're having with leaders, it seems like maybe do one last look of who's at the table, who ought to be at the table, who is not at the table, maybe doesn't know they should be at the table, that we need to talk to. Like, is that the early learning, child care centers?
That's the first thing, when you said that, that's what came to mind for me, because I know early childhood, I'm sure, will emerge some kind of way in our plan, so I appreciate that.
Thank you.
If we could add, we're very fortunate also in our public affairs team that we added that arm of engagement and outreach. So the engagement and outreach team is at the table and talking very closely with Ms. Taylor and the team that's working on the development access points for the strategic plan. And one of the things we want to do is to arm that team with a toolkit, so when they're engaging in the community with all of our community partners, when you just mentioned that early childhood education, that really triggered my mind. But all the community partners that we're currently working with and those that we are developing relationships with, the engagement team will reach out directly to them for feedback on this strategic plan. And we got a residual benefit from that in the work that we did and when we tweaked the current plan that we're in to finish out these final 2 years. We saw some great dive into the work that we're doing of the strategic plan from community partners because they want to be aligned with the work that the district is doing because of our shared goals. So being on the front end with these partners that we've already developed strong relationships with as we're developing this new 5-year plan is pretty exciting because of the residual benefit you get not only from their feedback, but from them knowing what we're doing, what our priorities are, and how they directly align to it.
So we're not working in conflict.
Okay. Ms. Campbell?
Thank you.
I think I know the answer to this before I ask, since you're the ROI queen, but the success measures, I appreciate this.
No pressure.
No, this, I'm sure that this is true, but the success measures of this going forward, even though we haven't fully, talked to everyone, et cetera, we're still developing, but are those going to be developed, the success measures of this concurrently? Or as the plan is rolling out, are we doing that on the forefront where we know what we're going to be measuring?
We're doing it on the forefront. We can't wait until the plan is up and running to decide how we're going to measure success. I mentioned in a previous slide, I don't remember which one, we have to start now thinking about priorities, and as priorities emerge, how will we measure success? And then we are having internal conversations around what are the right predictive measures to look at to determine if we are successful. I think we have opportunities to refine what we look at to really determine success. We want to have more predictive measures.
And how many?
Yes.
Because,
okay.
and there's a discussion that we need to have as a board, because I think currently, right now, we have 41 KPIs. And, as this is also tied to my evaluation, and I've been looking at the possibility of how to refine that. I've had people say that's way too many. But at the same time, as I have shared with Ms. Taylor, I believe strongly in metrics of accountability. So I don't want to be out here operating with 2 or 3 metrics, because what that does is that lets people off the hook, right? What gets measured gets done, and I'm clear about that, and that's a value system that I have within myself and in my leadership. So we will need to have some discussion as we shape our KPIs and what that looks like, because I'm not willing to shy away from it. I don't know if 41 is the right number. We may need more, we may need less, but we definitely need to have that discussion.
And I'm hesitant to complicate matters, but I'll say we're also looking at, within the KPI, not only leading indicators, but what could be potentially KPIs that we could also look at as well. And so we haven't fleshed out those conversations, but those are conversations that we are beginning to have. And so they're very formative in nature, but those conversations are emerging because the bottom line is we want to really know that if we're if we're achieving our priorities and if what we're investing in as far as priorities, if we're meeting those measures, because we know what impact that has on students.
That was literally, you both just said the next questions I had. Leading and lagging indicators, are they both being included? And the accountability piece, because as a box checker and someone who likes to get something done, check the box, move along, it turns into compliance
Yes.
rather than performance driven,
Right,
right? So instead of worrying about the performance that we were after, like being more successful, now it's everyone being compliant, check, move on. And so I think that's really good.
And we're being thoughtful about it. We're not jumping because there is a difference. There are different opinions or schools of thought. Do you have the whole kit and caboodle, or do you narrow it on those things that are highest leverage? And so we're having detailed conversations so that we arrive at what's best. And again, that's going to take us to the best place around outcomes.
And one last suggestion or one thought that I had about this too is an escalation or like remediation plan maybe to have in place. So in case something goes awry or we're not meeting the success metric, do we have a plan B or C in place where we say, if X, then Y happens, and that's how we get ourselves back on track, where we're not doing it on the tail end? Like, let's say we're not having kids, which is not going to happen because of Ignite, but let's say we're not having kids not read at grade level. What do? I don't know. So we know on the front end what we're going to do, and we implement that.
And we can make adjustments. And I think a good example of what we're already doing that could carry into the new plan in some shape and form is the 45-day plans. So looking at not just at the end of the year or not just when we get the state data, but how are we making mid-year adjustments and course corrections along the way. We cannot afford to wait till it's over to say we didn't make the mark.
An autopsy.
I love that you say that.
Cannot wait to do autopsy.
Okay.
Right. Any other questions?
Thank you very much. We've got another presentation.
Thank you.
I think it's going to take a little bit longer.
All right, so good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Davidson.
Give me just a moment. We can rock and roll. All right, so we are here today to discuss the transportation attendance boundary adjustment proposal and the update. So the objectives for today will be review the considerations when we make attendance boundary adjustments, basically our parameters and our guidance, to share the updates from our initial proposal in October, and to highlight how our stakeholder input and data inform decisions. So our purpose, why do we do boundary adjustments, right? Sometimes families feel like we sit in our offices and go, ha, ha, ha. That is not the truth, right? We do it to make sure that we are putting our students and their needs first. So our students often ride on the bus for long periods of time, and that increases our transportation costs, right? So when a baby's on a bus for over an hour, that's time that a baby could be at home with their family, loved ones, or with someone else working on those homework items. It also the goal of boundary adjustments is to optimize our underutilized schools. Many of our schools are at a good number, but some of our schools are overpopulated and some of our schools are underpopulated. So we want to be maximizing that. Then we want to ensure that we're supporting the growth. So we have heard that we have some potential growth in Western Chatham County. And so we want to make sure that we are forward thinking so that we can accommodate the population shifts as they go through the county. We want to maximize the continuity for our students and staff. What does that mean? That means that if you were recently redistricted to a new school, we want to be mindful of that, right? Sometimes you might buy a house in a neighborhood because of a particular school that house is zoned for. If we have already rezoned you within the last 5-10 years, we want to be mindful and not move you around too frequently. What we want to make sure is that it aligns with our strategic priority number 4, our stewardship priority. It also has to align with our long-range facility plan and our ESPOS priorities. What we sell to the public, what we tell the public, we want to honor that, right? And then we want to make sure we're using demographic data and community input. Highlighting these particular student and district benefits, it will impact over 300 students. It can save 20 to 30 minutes on ride time, and it can help us reduce routes. So we have routes called double backs. That means that the bus driver takes a whole group of students home, goes back to the school, picks up another bus full of students and takes them home. This helps us eliminate those double backs. It means that we're more efficient with our resources, so the bus driver doesn't have to circle back around. It also helps with on-time arrival. So it's very important that we get our students to school before school begins and gives them an opportunity to go eat breakfast. Breakfast and lunch is free for all students for one meal, or for one serving at each meal. So we're very excited to offer that, but if the students aren't getting there on time, they can't take advantage of that benefit, right? And I don't know about you, but when I'm hungry, I'm not a good learner. So we want to make sure that they have the opportunity to have full bellies. So we went out to our communities to get their input. And we had 12 engagement sessions. 6 of those were staff meetings, and 6 were parent and community meetings. We hold our staff meetings separately to honor our staff and give them an opportunity to provide input first. And then we had our parent and community meetings as well. So we did hear some consistent concerns throughout the meetings, concerns about large-scale transitions and their impact on the students, family, and staffing. So if you're moving in one of our opportunities that we paused, you'll be reminded, Durin, we were going to move 185 students. Right? That's a big number to move. So that was one of the concerns that was uplifted, was just the impact to the families and the students, and then the staffing. The emphasis on limiting additional disruption for families, especially those that have been impacted by prior boundary changes over the last 10 years. The need for clarity about daily schedules and programming, staffing structures, and the student movement within a K-8 environment. Some individuals aren't familiar with K-8 environments, so they don't understand, right? And if you're not a parent who's been at a K-8 before, you might be a little nervous about how your child would be, a young child, in with larger children. So that was a concern that was raised. And then the impact on student and staff culture. We have some very positive cultures in our schools, and people who work in those schools and students and alumni that attend those schools are very proud of that culture. So there was a concern that that culture may go away if I move to a new school, right? So that was something that was uplifted. This is a reminder of how we started our community meetings. This slide is back from December of 2024. And so this is where we went to the Pooler community to first ask them about what would you rank as your number 1 option, your number 2 option, and so forth. So now let's talk about where we are, because we have made some changes along the way. So we're going to start with the western part of the county. So for Pooler Elementary and Bloomingdale Elementary, Pooler Elementary will be designated as an early learning center serving pre-K only. The site will include pre-K classrooms that will be relocated from New Hampstead K-8, West Chatham Elementary School, Bloomingdale Elementary School, and Pooler Elementary School sites. It will allow for expansion of pre-K classrooms, so that means that we can take the current classrooms that are pre-K at these sites, but we can also have more pre-K classrooms. And then Bloomingdale Elementary will transition into a K-8 with the phased approach. So we would add 6th grade the first year, 7th grade the next year, and then 8th grade the next year. For New Hampstead K-8 students that reside in the Hunt Club neighborhood, the rezoning to Bloomingdale is, let's talk about that impact. So if we have the capacity at New Hampstead and the family provides transportation, those students will be allowed to remain at New Hampstead. As a reminder, these students were rezoned from Godley Station, and so we're trying to honor that commitment that we will not rezone you unless we absolutely have to. Families would apply for the administrative placement, and the principal and the Office of School Leadership staff has been very supportive that if we have capacity and they meet the requirements for the administrative placement, we will honor that. Sibling continuity will be prioritized. So if you are currently a New Hampstead student and you have a young sibling who is up and coming, we would honor that and prioritize that so that they too be enrolled at New Hampstead. And then families that move into this neighborhood and are not currently attending New Hampstead would be zoned for Bloomingdale. Okay, it's a little bit confusing. I want to stop there and make sure we don't have any questions about those. Good. Okay. So let's dive into our pre-K. So from this smiling little face, you can see how happy our pre-K babies are and how happy we are as a district to have them. But in between Bloomingdale having 3 classes, New Hampstead having 2, and West Chatham having 4, we still had additional additional students who had an interest in attending those schools who didn't get in, right? So they filled out an application saying, I want to go to pre-K, and you can see the numbers there. Across the district, we had over 366 individuals who applied, and we didn't have a seat. I'm sorry, we have 366 seats across the district for pre-K. For the wait list, we had, I don't know how many we had on the wait list altogether.
66.
366, I'm sorry. That was
So
right.
we have a high demand, but we don't have enough seats to fill that demand, which is why we want to expand Pooler to offer additional seats, because we know we have the demand for that.
Okay, so the first thing would be to swing Pooler Elementary School to Bloomingdale Elementary School. When we swing them, they will remain as Pooler Elementary School at Bloomingdale, right? So 2 separate schools in 1 site. Similar to how we did New Hampstead and Bloomingdale when Bloomingdale swung to New Hampstead. So we would convert Bloomingdale from an elementary school to a K-6 for school year 26-27, with 5th grade students at Pooler Elementary and at Bloomingdale right now remaining at Bloomingdale for 6th grade, right? So for this kind of helps outline the capacity. So for school year 25-26, we had about 746 students there in the early January of 2026 timeframe. The school holds can hold 1,000 students, so we have room to swing both and to accommodate that. In school year 27 through 28, 6th grade would roll to 7th grade, and then in 28 to 29, 7th grade would roll to 8th grade. So in 28, school year 28-29, that's August of 28, we would open Pooler Early Learning Center. This is when we would transition to have pre-K only at Pooler. Students at Bloomingdale would be Bloomingdale students, okay? We would provide transportation via the bus if you lived in that area. So as a district, we allow you to make a selection for pre-K up to 3 sites. You don't have to live in that zone to make that selection. But in order to get transportation, you do have to live in that zone for the bus to transport you. So Bloomingdale at this time would service grades K through 8. West Chatham Elementary would service grades K through 5. West Chatham Middle School would service grades 6 through 8. We would like to start the design and construction for the new K-8 facility that will be at the West Chatham Elementary School, West Chatham Middle School site between 27-28 and 28-29. And then after the new building is built, we would start the design and construction for the high school. So this is the current attendance zones for the elementary schools in New Hampstead K-8 in West Chatham County. And then this is the recommended zones. Then let's dive into West Chatham Middle School, unless we have any questions about it.
This is just clarifying, but I'm just to make sure I understand. We've had these conversations so much, but 2 years is the time frame for renovation. Is that correct?
We
Pooler.
anticipate 2 years. It could be faster.
Okay.
But I don't want to promise it will be faster. We would rather come in faster, but we anticipate 2 years at this time.
Awesome. So the setup where Pooler Elementary remains a unique school within Bloomingdale would last, we are estimating that at 2 years right now before it turns into Pooler Early Learning Center.
Yes, ma'am.
Got it. Thank you.
Ms. Grabowski?
And then piggybacking off of that, because Pooler is a separate school within a school, after those 2 years, I know the pre-K babies What happens to the rest of the Pooler Elementary, or are you getting to that? What happens to the rest of the Pooler Elementary School population that has been housed at Bloomingdale?
They would become Bloomingdale
They become Bloomingdale at that point.
Elementary School students at that time, or Bloomingdale Elementary staff at that time.
Okay, so they do make that, okay, transition.
So in theory, it's only one transition. So
Yeah,
once they transition there, they will never go back
Right.
to the Pooler, existing Pooler facility. Moving forward, it would just be the pre-K students at
That
the
go
Pooler
back, yeah.
facility. And then those students, depending on what school they're supposed to go to, that's where they will start kindergarten.
and I guess, and this is much more, I mean, and that totally makes sense. I guess I'm just wondering, why keep it as a school within a school if it's really going to be one school at the end of the day? But that might be based on parent input, which I completely respect, and if that's what makes sense, then that's fine.
Next year, if we did that, this was a lot of discussion, so it would only be like 3 classrooms for Pooler Elementary. If we went ahead and converted it, it wouldn't even be a school because we wouldn't move New Hampstead, we wouldn't move West Chatham.
No, I mean, when we're moving the Pooler Elementary students to Bloomingdale as the swing site.
Because we would have to fundamentally, at that point, close Pooler.
Okay,
So if you're a first grade student at Pooler right now.
right.
If we were to go ahead and make you a Bloomingdale Bear next year.
Yeah.
The students that would be Pooler students would be only the pre-K that are currently at Bloomingdale.
In essence, that would mean we would have,
Have to
it would
close.
close the school
Okay.
because there wouldn't be enough kids to.
There's also a staffing impact you want to take into account
Okay.
there, and it's less disruptive for the staff.
Okay, and that all makes sense, so, okay, thank you.
All right, so now let's talk about West Chatham Middle School. So West Chatham Middle School, we have planned for 20 students who are zoned for West Chatham Middle School to be rezoned over to New Hampstead K-8. 59 students from Pooler Elementary would traditionally have went to West Chatham Middle School to be in 6th grade, and 42 from Bloomingdale would have traditionally went as well. So because we are keeping the Bloomingdale and the Pooler 5th grade, rolling them forward to Bloomingdale, that is less of a population going into West Chatham Middle School. New Hampstead has a capacity of 1,500. With the swing of the 20 students over, they still have room. And then Bloomingdale has a swing as well for those individuals that live over in the Hunt Club and could go, or the Grassland area. So this shows the current attendance boundary. So the beautiful royal blue, matching my jacket, is New Hampstead K-8, and the pink is West Chatham Middle School. And then you'll see here, this is the new colors. So that little green tip at the top, that's our Hunt Club area. So those are the babies that are going to remain, but then in the future would transition over to be the Bloomingdale area for future opportunities. Okay? So let's talk about the financial implications. Oh, yes, ma'am.
Are we consulting with realtors to make sure they explain to home buyers where those students will end up within the next 2 years?
We will, yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
because, if you move into a neighborhood thinking you're going to one school, then find out that you're not. So it might be a good idea to connect with the realtors, as we, continue with this, so the families can understand.
Yes, I appreciate you uplifting
Yes,
that.
that's a good
We will-
point.
We'll definitely make way. So the financial implications for West Chatham K-8, that is an East Lost 5 project. It is budgeted at $85 million for the K-8 portion. The funding is there from East Lost 5, and that will be to demolish West Chatham Elementary School and West Chatham Middle School and to build the new K-8. Then for Pooler Early Learning Center renovation and Bloomingdale K-8 reconfiguration, I want to note that these are estimates that we put together using our current construction costs at another site. So we used our Mercer Middle School, because it's a very active site. It was an older building, but each building is unique and each site is unique. So we want to give that caveat that these are simply just estimates that we put together for our best effort. So we estimate that creating a early learning site for pre-K only that would house have a capacity of 300 students, most likely remaining an open campus because Pooler is an open campus. It would be about $14.9 million. We honor the opportunity, if funding is available, to eliminate that open campus, but I just want to be very transparent that some of that will likely remain with the dollar amounts. Bloomingdale, the gym expansion with a dedicated chorus room or choral room is estimated at about $10.5 million. So that total estimated investment is $25.4 million. Looking at the funds, Pooler had $9.6 million allocated in East Blost 5. In East Blost 4, we have coming up this afternoon a board agenda item for the budget to recommend that we record the additional funds that came in above what we had initially projected in East Blost 4. Utilizing some funds in our unallocated category of East Blost 4, we recommend pulling $18.4 million. And that will not deplete the unallocated, but that will take that down, not totally, but down to a small amount. And so it would be total available funding of $28 million. Note that this does not impact the East Blost 5 contingency that was put forth in the initial budget. So that was $30 million. So I'm going to pause there and make sure we don't have any questions about the finance. I know it's a little complicated because you'll see the budget piece later for E4.
Okay, Ms. Campbell?
Okay, first piece, the open campus. I've heard some concerns about this since it was viewable on board docs, and I share this concern. I know it's in a neighborhood, but it sounds like we're not going to be able to bulldoze any of the buildings, take them down, rebuild. It's going to be a lot of renovation, which means as acreage limitations are an issue, which is why we cannot put very many children there. Why do we believe that an open campus is going to be, number one, I guess, in compliance with the state standards and safe? And is there a way to close it off in some way that assures better safety? Do we know? Have we looked into that?
That's a good question. So right now, we are just in the very initial pieces.
Okay.
So once we bring in we'll meet with the schools team, we'll meet with campus, Board of Education Police Department, because too, we honor the concern of what I call an open campus, which means you have buildings that are not connected. So students have to go outside, and because of the age of the children, they generally have to be accompanied by an adult. So that becomes the challenge. That is something that we would honor in the design to see if it has to remain, what we could do to limit. It could be that you have, it's still exterior, but you have kind of guarded off the walkways. So it's not that somebody could easily come into a walkway, but it's still an exterior walkway between two buildings. So that can be a possibility. Until we get further in the design, we can't say that it's going to remain open campus, or it won't. We just want to be very transparent that it most likely could.
Well, and I just wanted to voice that concern because I share it, and being at that school, I've been there often. Walking those walkways and knowing the acreage is so limited, it's like you got a runner and they're right off that path and on a street.
Yes.
And it's going to be very hard to notice that potentially with a bunch of pre-Kers.
Out and about.
Yeah, and
we
so-
can do it more exterior fencing as well. We want to minimize the appearance of a prison-like with all the
Absolutely.
exterior fencing, but there is opportunities to work through additional exterior fencing.
And the reason why that takes so long is because we have to have all stakeholders' voices at the table. So we've got to bring our pre-K team. We've got to get teachers involved in that decision-making. So we are hesitant to say what something will or will not be, because if we commit to something and then something else is desired, then it looks like we've been too proactive in our decision-making. So
And I appreciate too the candor and the transparency and that's one thing I did want to address just publicly. And I want everyone to know from my community that I know on this side of it, it came from an effort to get information out quickly, make sure communication was happening often. We were trying to fix some of the errors that had happened in the past where people specifically at Pooler Elementary felt like they weren't getting heard, or they had fears that the school was going to quickly shut down, and it wasn't true, but they were hanging in the balance constantly with what's the state of our school, what's going to happen. But in that effort, I feel like we could do better in the future, and I hope that we take this as a moment to reflect on, as you say, the design process is still ongoing, so you don't want to overcommit. Love that. But you want to give, because what I have heard is not that people are upset necessarily at what is going to happen. They understand it needed to happen. Everyone had accepted it. It's more that it changed, to where, to Mr. Hediger's point, that it's a staffing impact. Now, no teachers will be able to remain at Pooler Elementary unless they receive pre-K certification, because there is no pre-K available there. And so, though I know we are going to work and put every effort into making sure these teachers are taken care of and receive preferential placement, et cetera. All of those things are true, and I believe that about our district staff. I do think that it was a little jarring to hear that everything had changed, and I feel like some of it was a little predictable before we gave information to the community about a set plan. And so I hope in the future we just make sure we have as much info as possible going forward, because I would hate for teachers to feel undervalued, if that makes sense. So that's my 2 cents, and I appreciate the work that's gone into this, though, and I know it went into Christmas. So I really, really appreciate that.
Can I make a clarification? This is Ramon Ray. Just wanted to make sure there's awareness as it relates to certification. The pre-K teachers have the regular elementary certification. So our pre-K teachers can go all the way up to 5th grade. So it's not a different certification that they would have, but it is teaching a different population that a lot of the upper grade teachers may not want to do.
I think there's a balance. So I always want to convey to the community that I'm listening. But at the same time, the community is also asking me to be clear. So it may seem like it's simple to do that, but it is not, right? Being iterative and listening sometimes means you have to change things. Because if I commit with clarity, then that means I'm not listening. So changes are happening because we want to be informed by community input. It's not a reckless change. It's to get to the best possible outcome. So I apologize publicly to anyone who feels like they have been done unto, because that was very much not the intention. My intention always is to listen and be informed. But just know that being iterative and listening sometimes means changes. And then that can sometimes be seen as a negative. They're changing. Well, I'm changing because I'm responding to what you're telling me. So it's
And I was talking to you the whole time, and to Ms. Davidson, and everyone is just trying to do what's best for Pooler when shutting it down was even on the table, but you did what the community wanted, which is we don't want just a derelict building. We want students in there and it to remain as it is. And so I do appreciate, and I know that they appreciate, that it's remaining that way. It's more of the operational side that got a little, we got a little ahead of ourselves, but that was not my aim to say that at all, so.
Ms. Grabowski.
And I just want to say, I think you clearly have listened and done a lot of work with this. I'm not nearly as close to it as Ms. Campbell, because obviously it's in her district, but I think, to me, this is a much better plan. We had some weird breaks before with Pooler and with Bloomingdale that just were anomalies And this, to me, just logically makes so much more sense. So I just want to commend the work that the team did and how you did listen to that feedback. And in my opinion, came back with something that is a much stronger plan, particularly for the long term. So,
Dr. Howard Hall.
Yes, thank you. Let's just not be oblivious to my concerns regarding Woodville-Tompkins, a high school that still functions in the body of a middle school. No athletic complex, maybe I'm saying complex, whatever, the track field and everything. I was told regarding, we were told regarding SPLOS 5, what was allocated originally. But now I'm looking at SPLOS 4, unallocated, recommended for Pooler, $18 million.
For Pooler and Bloomingdale.
For Pooler and Bloomingdale. Don't have a problem with that, but I do have a problem if we continue to overlook my concern regarding Woodville-Tompkins. There's no way possible that this school should still function in a middle school, but we are. No athletic facilities, nothing has been done. We met a few months ago, and I made a statement during the meeting that this sounds like a bunch of fluff. And somebody said, that was mean. I said, well, that's what I meant. Enough is enough. I was told regarding Woodville-Tompkins, we were in the planning stages, and we're not sure. Well, some answers need to happen right now, because I'm looking at this $18 million that's being allocated, that's unallocated for one part of West Chatham. Well, Woodville-Tompkins is West Chatham also.
Ma'am.
So I'm concerned about it. I'm upset, to tell you the truth, because we're being overlooked and overlooked and overlooked as being the #1 high school pretty much in the nation, being overlooked. Not even having a track field.
What I have asked Woodville-Tompkins school leader and team is that, so we hear what the alumni desires, but we also have to marry that with the current context, the current principal's vision for the school. And I think the last time we all collectively met, he was working on a strategic plan. But somehow we have to marry the two. And I know there is a desire amongst the alumni to have football and to expand that campus, but I don't know if that necessarily aligns with so somehow we've got to decide what is the future of Woodville, and it's got to take into account the past, the present, and the future. And that's the piece that we're waiting. I knew your question was going to come up. I'd already told the team, as soon as we present this, Dr. Howard Hall is going to say, you found money to do this, so where's the money to do what I've asked for? So I hope you know and trust, again, I said it to the team before this presentation weeks ago, that this was going to be what you would raise, and just in predictability, you did. So I'm not surprised that you're upset, and I'm not surprised that you have questions, but somehow we have to figure out how to marry the past, the present, and the future. And I think that's where I'm struggling right now on how to commit to what you're saying you want for that school versus what the principal and staff and current students see as the future of that school. And somehow I've got to marry the two things.
And it's not so much as to what I want.
Or what the alumni.
That was a middle school, and it still is a middle school. They added labs. Islands was Coastal was a middle school, became Islands High School. I just want the same.
But when we make it a high school, we
The
have to.
district want the same, the
Right.
taxpayers should want the same.
We have to figure out what the high school is, who is it serving, how big does it need to be, all of those things. I can't do that without understanding what the long-term vision is. I can't just say, make it a high school. What kind of high school? How big does
already
the
a
high
high
school need to
school.
be? Who does the school serve? Is it going to remain, or do we want to open more seats? Do we want to have football or not? I can't just say, make it a high school. We have to have a little bit of a more defined vision of what that should be.
But it is a high school, and I didn't say anything about football right now. football didn't come out of my mouth, although it would be
Been a
great to have a
discussion.
football
Right.
school, team. And I understand that the current principal there doesn't want to expand because,
I didn't say he didn't want to.
Well,
I haven't been,
does-
I don't know what the desire
and
is.
during that meeting, it was found that there were additional seats that were not even occupied. Shouldn't be any empty seats at Woodville. There's a wait list. So it's not what I want, it's what's right.
Agreed.
The right thing. It's currently in a high school. And regarding what the staff and, it's already a high school, so it should be functioning as a high school facility-wise. And we have athletics there.
Yeah.
No track field, none of that is there. Now, I know that the plan is to do the demolition of Lower Woodville to work that area for athletics. But the problem is, do we have the resources to do it? And the answer was no.
We have the resources for the athletic amenities,
We do, yes, ma'am.
but I don't know that we have the resources to expand the high school and bring it up to what a full-fledged high school would look like. I don't know if we have the resources for that, but we have the resources for the athletic amenities.
And it's a
So-
timeline to move out the Building Bridges High School once the Alternative Learning Center is complete.
So, and Dr. Hoskins-Brown, I know you've had your hand up, but I need to chime in here because I was also at that meeting. And what I took away from that meeting and from speaking with the principal there are two different visions that I'm seeing. And there is a vision of the Alumni Association, and there's a vision from the principal. And we've not heard from the staff. Right now, Woodville is an amazing school. It is also a choice school. Parents that send their kids to choice schools, like Savannah Arts or whatever, they don't expect every sport, all of those things. So we don't, Savannah Arts has like an incredible cross-country team. They don't have facilities for that. And they know that. So I don't see this as an issue of us not being fair. But I think it would be better if we had clearer communication, because all we've heard has been from you and the Alumni Association. We've not heard from the staff, Ed. And I'm going to listen to the staff. I'm going to listen to the staff and the principal. We've not heard all of these things.
And the current students.
And the current students, what they want. So, Dr. Hoskins-Brown.
This warrants a larger discussion, and I regret that I only hear about the disconnect in the planning for Woodville when Dr. Howard Hall makes a complaint about the oversight or the feeling of an oversight, and then we have this development. We haven't talked about the plan for this school in any larger longitudinal planning, although we've talked about other long-term plans for different schools. We spent a lot of time prior to this particular board talking about what Savannah Early College was going to be, what it wasn't going to be, what it was going to have. We spent lots of time talking about islands and what that complex was going to be and how it was being leveraged. We just haven't talked about Woodville. And I have heard the principal being called out as a thought leader on this 4 times in this exchange, and I don't believe that the principal should be as dominant a figure in the trajectory of a future for a school as what I've heard in this exchange. I think they ought to be part of it. I think the alumni ought to be part of it. Beach alumni, I was loud in Beach alumni. We said things that we wanted, we got some of it. But the school has matured beyond what the alumni were lobbying for, and it's matured past what the sitting principal and the principal that followed plan. It has matured into something else. I think as a district, we own Woodville, and we ought to be telling the community what Woodville ought to look like 50 years from now, long after all of us will have retired principal, board members, and all that. So I'd like to have a bigger conversation, because I think that probably all of what the alumni may want may not be the best fit, and all of what the principal, the staff, and the current students want may not be the best fit. There's probably an answer somewhere in between that, like Mr. Moss says, may not be football, may not be lacrosse, maybe track, maybe basketball. There was a time where there were some students at Savannah Arts who wanted basketball, and there were staff at Savannah Arts that did not want basketball, so basketball didn't get there. So I just think there ought to be more voices and more time, and it shouldn't be an add-on to a conversation. And I can see how, when you're told there's not resources for an issue, and then you're looking at an unallocated amount going to an upcoming project, being disconcerting. Because when we transferred all the monies to these unallocated amounts, I asked Mr. Batra, what's the plan for the unallocated money? And I was told, oh, we haven't determined that yet. And you have a board member who's seeing that and responding in a challenged way.
So I thought we did provide a report back to you all on those allocated, but Ms. Davidson, could you speak to where this unallocated money came from? Because at the time, I did not have this money.
That's correct.
At the time at the time that we said, I don't have the resources for it, I didn't have the resources.
Yeah.
So can you?
But it's okay, and I'm okay with that. I think one thing that we're missing that Dr. Howard Hall is saying is the first dollar you came up with, you didn't think of Woodville. I think that's what
It is, but.
that's what I'm hearing, is that
Yes, but that's actually not, I knew this was going to come up. So I knew you were going to express disappointment. I even told Ms. Campbell this, that as soon as I put this up, Dr. Hall is going to say, why not Woodville? Or another board member is going to say, well, why not my school? Hubert needs things. And I knew this was going to come up as a topic of conversation. So I don't want anybody to think it was an oversight or we're not giving Woodville the time and attention. When I said we didn't have resources in November when this came up and we went and met with the school, I didn't. I didn't have those resources. Those have just landed to us when?
So these are the additional funds that were collected from July through October, and so we didn't account for all those funds until afterwards.
Right, and so when were we informed that we had this addition?
The total amount, we were actually just calculating this in early January, late December.
So January is when I found out I had.
So what's your deadline for resolving the issue of what to do with Woodville?
I do want to honor that Woodville, the lower Woodville has a terrible FCI score, right? We recognize that. Lower Woodville is moving. That's where the Building Bridges High School and Compensatory Programs is located. They are moving to the Alternative Learning Center once it's complete. We're currently working on renovating that site. And then Compensatory Programs will move out to an admin site, hopefully the Savannah High site when it's constructed. The Pooler Elementary School FCI score is also very poor.
Could you please tell the community what FCI stands for?
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you, my apologies. So the Facility Condition Index, or we sometimes call it a Facility Condition Analysis. So it means like how old the building is, how well is the HVAC, the roof, the plumbing, how well is the building from a healthy standpoint, not talking about health, but basically, does it need to be renovated, reconstructed? We have other schools that also have poor FCI or FCA scores. Some of the Windsor Forest Elementary is one of those schools, so there is a plan. Upper Woodville does not have a poor score. It has a very positive score because it has been renovated more recently.
Respectfully and kindly, though, you had a meeting, I didn't know about, didn't go, wasn't part of that meeting. You had a meeting that you all said you were at, and a problem was presented at the meeting. What is your timeline to resolve the concerns at that meeting? That's what I'm asking for.
We didn't establish a timeline.
Okay, so that's the nature of the conflict that we're looking at right now, is that a problem has been articulated multiple times and there's no timeline to resolve it. That,
Yeah,
I-
I mean,
I can accept that, but what I struggled to accept is somehow I didn't think about Woodville when I found out I had extra funds in January, because that is I did not, my own child went there. My own child ran on the dirt track in the back and had to be transported. So I know for a fact what that experience is, and I knew this was going to come up. We did not resolve the timeline. The
Okay.
funding, however, was not an oversight.
Mr. Smith and then Dr. Brinkman.
Just a quick question. It seems like there's been a meeting with the Alumni Association and community, but there's also another meeting going on with the school administrator. Has there ever been a meeting with both parties together?
We wanted to plan that, but to be honest, there was a conversation, obviously, with Dr. Howard Hall, Mr. Ellis, the county commissioner, wanted to recant and give us promises made from East Bloss 1 all the way up, which was very helpful because I was able to understand what has happened through the years in terms of what has been promised and what did not happen. And of course, his perception. What we did not want to do is to just host an alumni meeting without a plan of how that facilitated conversation would go. But I really do think Dr. Hoskins Brown hit the nail on the head in terms of feedback to me about I need to put this on a timeline that I can communicate. I know there are steps and actions that need to be taken, but what I have not done is put it on a timeline. So out of sight, out of mind, it's not on a timeline, it just doesn't happen. So we need to have that meeting, I just need to get it timelined out. And it has not happened to date.
Okay.
Dr. Brinkman.
yeah. So now that we've turned this into a CIC meeting, this is on you, Sean, to start running it.
I knew.
I fully
knew it was
appreciate the
gonna happen.
conversation. It all needs to happen. I'm glad that we have board members that are embedded in their community, working for their community. The big questions here with this project is it is a part of the E5 plan. It's already been numerous times stated that's probably not going to be the right amount of money. So good on you for advocating there. What the answers to the timeline is this a project, depending on cost, that is going to fall to our management of it? Or is this going to be put on the timeline for the company that hasn't even been able to apply to the RFP that hasn't, I don't think, been posted yet? So like, I think we're getting a lot of the cart way before the horse. We've got this project's gonna happen. I know it's gonna happen because you won't not let it happen, which is a great thing. It's just, is it gonna hit, I can't remember what that dollar amount is. Is it gonna hit the dollar amount that it goes into the timeline of whoever becomes our project manager for E5? Or does it stay in the house of the district, and then it would be incumbent on Dr. Watts to get it in the timeline? But I believe that part of that RFP is after a certain dollar point, those project managers are going to look at all of the projects that we want to have happen and figure out how they believe, as an expert, it should go moving forward. So we got a little bit of waiting there if it's a project that's gonna fall into the lap of the project manager. Now, again, as the owner of the funds, the voted elected officials that use the funds that come from the community, we also can drive that a little bit to say this is a project that when you're building your timeline, said project manager, that needs to be earlier on or later on. And I feel like that's going to be a conversation with whoever wins that. But I feel like, I guess the first thing would be not a timeline, but is this a project we're doing? Because then it is a timeline for us to figure out. Or is this a project that's definitely going to be held by the project manager? And that means we've got to wait for that person to, first of all, apply to be the project manager, be voted on us to be the project manager, and then give them time to make that timeline to run E5.
I want to clarify, so, and our proposed amount was $15 million. For Woodville, we did move forward with Upper Woodville for the HVAC to go ahead and do the immediate work at that site because that was something that we needed to do. For Pooler, we're utilizing the board-approved contract architects. So we have assigned an architect based on that to have, but we are we're in the very beginning, right? So we haven't even gotten the schools involved and the Office of School Leadership, because we're just starting the kickoff for the design. For the Woodville-Tompkins piece, I'd have to go back and look and see what that dollar amount is estimated, to see if that would go to our proposed third party in the future, or if it would be in-house.
I also think there's a little bit of confusion as to what we actually had in 5 for Woodville Tompkins.
It was HVAC and athletics.
Yeah, so we had one thing, so we had all of, before 5, all of the discussions about what projects we were going to do. This came up after we had passed 5, okay? So now we're talking about a totally different project, because what was in 5, what the voters voted on, was what was in 5.
It was for
So-
HVAC,
And
believe
athletics.
roofing, and then the
Athletics.
athletic.
That's what the
was it.
voters approved.
That's what the voters approved. So now we're saying, oh, no, we want more than that, which is fine. But, you know, I want to defend our staff and everyone. It's not, they didn't just avoid Woodville Tompkins. They are doing exactly what 5 was passed to do. But what now we're hearing, no, that's not all. We want more. Which is, I mean, everyone would love more.
can do it.
Yes.
Gotta figure out
Thank
where-
you.
Dr. Howard, but Dr. Hoskins Brown, I'm sorry.
I just want to be very, very clear on the record about what I'm asking for a timeline, because y'all are combining the vision for what Woodville is going to be with activation of spending on the facilities that Dr. Howard Hall has mentioned, because that's part of the vision that she's heard from her community that they want. We've heard lots of information this morning on return on investment and strategic planning. I am asking for the strategic vision, a timeline on figuring out what is going to be done relative to past promises and future long-term goals for Woodville, and then find the money for that to happen. Because part of the exchange earlier was kind of a back and forth of what the action, what the commitment was, and it's very clear that there's not a consensus on what the vision should be. So for
Yes,
me,
right.
it's not the money yet. It is, I don't know this whole background.
We have to name the thing we are trying to get the school to be, and then backwards plan from there.
I agree. Now, in the past, have there been broken promises or something like that? I don't know. It sounds like there has been misunderstanding around what was going to happen for Woodville, very similar to what happened when Beach was redesigned. All the different things that were supposed to come, and this promise was broken, you need to make good on this, and it got split between two East Bluffs activities. I don't think it is cart before the horse to put a deadline on what is the vision going to be and do it while we're planning strategically, and then commit
The funding
to the
that.
funding.
It is exactly what you just said.
And the problem is, again, no plan. It was asked, what is the plan? There was no plan, and that's why I was told not to host a town hall, because we did not have a plan.
Well, the plan was what we put forth in East Bluffs 5, which was HVAC, roofing, and amenities. Then some of these other conversations about
Expansion of the
expansion, the upper campus needing to be built out to, that came after the fact.
Well, maybe so much, I guess, the point I keep trying to make is that it's a middle school still. It has not changed. The only thing that happened, labs were added.
Auditorium and gym, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, the auditorium and gym, but as far as the school itself,
I just wish we would have captured it in our East Bluffs 5 planning, because now it's after the fact, and it's harder for us to, we will have to find the funding for it.
Ms. Hall?
Dr. Watts, is it possible I felt that the one-on-one interviews last week with the consultant went very well. If it would be possible for us to have one-on-ones with Ms. Davidson's team, because there are lots of things going on in our districts that I think need a vision adjustment and so if we could possibly arrange that, where each board member, if you don't have any concerns about your district, fine, but each board member have that opportunity to sit and talk.
And what,
And
I am open to that. What would be the ultimate goal that you would want to achieve? Because what I'm afraid of is then we create a wish list and
oh, no,
Woodville
not
gets to be
anything going
something.
forward, only those things that have been historically, like my ball field at Savannah High. Okay? That the kids whose parents complained to me, I think he's graduating this year. So that's kaput for him. So I'm not talking about,
Get everybody's individual wish list.
I don't mean a wish
Yeah.
list. I'm talking about the things, the projects that are in play, but that we don't really have a complete vision of. Johnson High School, I understood that was going to be this and that, and now I'm hearing that, the person I thought was involved with it is maybe leaving. So if we could just get some clarity about these projects under $15 million that we have been told we're going to
Absolutely.
go into effect.
Yes, that's fair.
Mr. Kaczmar.
So,
This is CIC.
no. I think everybody has valid and thoughtful points. I'm sitting here thinking the only promises we actually make as a board is what we pass when we pass our East Bluffs referendum. And then our only legal obligations are what the taxpayers tell us, yes or no, we have to follow through on. And I've been in so many meetings over the last 15 years where 18 different audience members say, I want this, or I want that, or a member of a municipality will say, we'd like this, we'd like that, and there's discussion about it. And then I leave thinking, okay, there was consensus on this and maybe this, and our staff said, we'll look at this. And then a week later, the meeting is recharacterized as, oh yeah, we got promised a pink playground and a blue bus and a yellow cafeteria. So it's all about perception, right? People leave meetings with different perceptions of what they think happened at the meeting. And I hear things that were, quote, promised in previous East Bluffs that I don't remember it that way. I remember something different. I remember negotiations and trade-offs. If we want a bigger gym, we're not going to be able to build an auditorium. What do you want? Oh, we'll have a bigger gym. Or we're going to do, this is a art school. It's not going to have certain athletic facilities. Are we okay with that as a board? Yes, we are. This is a CTAE school. Are we okay with not having certain facilities? Yes, we are. So what I see now is an iteration of we have to evolve in our planning of what do certain schools in the district look like. There's always been a recognition that not every school will have the same exact physical facilities, same exact amenities, same exact extracurriculars because of the nature of the school, particularly if it was a choice program. Islands is still in a middle school. Islands doesn't have air conditioning in any of its hallways. Islands still has middle school bathrooms for high school kids. Islands opened 15 years ago. I think in East Bluffs 5, they are now getting some adult-sized bathrooms. But there was also an understanding at the time that we're not going to build a new school. We're going to use the facility that was available. And the community at the time and the board at the time said, we're fine going into a middle school, knowing it will evolve. And over the years, over 4 East Bluffs, it has. Same thing with Woodville. Woodville deserves attention. It's gotten attention in every East Bluff. It's gotten a gym, an auditorium, renovations on the interior, labs, and particularly CTAE facilities. The same time, Woodville deserves to have a conversation about what is it going to be down the road. But I think back, like we had this discussion about Woodville, about multiple schools in the district back when we were doing our retreat planning for East Bluff in the fall, before we actually voted on it. So I go back to, I mean, we all go to community meetings where lots of things are said and lots of things are raised, but the only promises we make as a collective board is what we vote on in our East Bluff referendum. That said, I 100% agree, we need to have a discussion about what Woodville should be down the road. And obviously, the Alumni Association, current board leadership, current board, or current staff, and current community members should have valuable input in that. And if we can find the money and the board decides collectively that's going to be a priority over the next 5 years outside of East Bluff, I'll 100% support it. But I also don't think it's I think we need to be careful about individual board members having individual meetings with our COO to advocate for things in the district, because we tried to remove that from the East Bluff and facilities planning budget cycle, precisely to avoid the loudest voice or the squeaky wheel gets rewarded. And I'm not saying that's what you are being, Dr. Howard Hall. I think your points are 100% accurate. And I think Dr. Hoskins-Brown's point about we don't have a timeline. It's not on a list, and therefore it's not getting addressed.
That's the point.
I think that's problem 1A, and we need to have that conversation and decide what to do next. But the reason we went to a facility conditions index, the reason we went to multiple board-wide planning discussions and getting input from the community was to keep the planning data-focused and out in the open. And I, as a board member, would prefer it stay that way, that the board make collective decisions based on data and based on, open discussion and input from the community as well.
Ms. Hall?
I certainly don't need to meet in private. Everyone knows I'm very willing to say what I have to say to the masses. But these programs these problems that come up and we say we're going to fix them, and then they kind of get shoved to the side because something else comes along. So that is what we need. We need a plan of execution that says, okay, the ball fields at Savannah High are going to be fixed so that the boys have some place to practice. They don't have to go find a place to practice. Ms. Davidson, you have certainly been very cooperative with coming out and talking with the coaches and all of that. But I'm the one who gets that in my ear from the parents that nothing has happened to improve the ball fields. So if this is the right venue, rather than just speak privately to Dr. Watts, if everyone wants to hear me say it, okay, I need to have our ball fields at Savannah High upgraded so the boys can practice and play at their home field.
That project is in the works.
We commit to doing all of the projects that we said we're going to do. I agree, you probably need an update on projects. What has thrown this off a little bit is the Woodville-Tompkins conversation came up after East Bluff was passed. So I've got to figure out now, with a renewed vision or revised vision of what we want the school to be, how do I now incorporate that into what we have already committed to?
And should it please our committee chair, will make sure that at the CIC committee, we highlight, I know Mr. Jones already has an update in there for the Savannah Biofields, but we'll make sure we update the timeline for E5 projects, because I think that will help clarify where we as a team have put different projects and why we put them in certain places. And so that will help see while we're making a recommendation on the allocation of funds to go towards Pooler and Blue.
Ms. Davidson, just the way we hold academic affairs accountable and all of the instructional side of the house, we have to hold, and I know you are an accountability guru, I do know that. We have to hold these projects. If this is the person who's in charge of this, okay, what's happening and what's not happening? So the accountability needs to be on both sides of the house.
Yes, ma'am, I strongly agree with you. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about Durin Middle School, Gould Elementary School, West Chatham Middle School, the move that impacted here. So initially, we had made a recommendation to include 185 students who are currently at West Chatham Middle School or coming up from Gould Elementary School and would normally attend West Chatham Middle School to be rezoned for Durin Middle School. This would help clean up a feeder pattern because historically we had rezoned students. So if you are at Gould Elementary School, you would, and our recommendation would go up to Durin and then match the high school that you currently attend, which is Beach High School. We have deferred this project, so we have put this on pause to allow the demographer to do additional reviews to make sure that, based on their enrollment projections, and to give us time to dive further and make sure this was the recommendation we would like to still move forward with. So what has not changed from the initial 2020?
Question.
Hang on.
Yes, sir, I'm sorry.
We have a question from Mr. Smith.
Question on that. Thank you for this information. My question is, since when we originally came up with this plan and we talked about these students being added to Durin, we did have a conversation with the principal about that, correct?
We had a conversation with the principals about the plan initially, and then when we chose to pause it, we did notify the principal and said, we're gonna pause it. We notified both West Chatham Middle School and Durin Middle School, and just told them we're gonna pause it to allow for additional demographic data.
Okay. When do we suspect that we'll have further guidance on this decision or conversation of the pause?
That's a good question. So I'm working with the demographer. They would love to give me everything at the end of February. I'm pushing them very hard because I wanted to make sure we're moving in the right direction with this boundary alignment. That's why I was able to meet with them earlier this week to have a very introductory early conversation on it. I do believe that we will have a finalized plan from them by mid-February. So we could bring that to the board retreat or to whatever Madam Superintendent decided was the best way to do small groups, something with the board members to make sure you have the opportunity to hear from the demographer and to understand, ask any questions you may have of them.
I also just want to add that while this is a demography, it will inform the decision about this boundary adjustment. We also had an East Blos 5 renovations to Durin. And we have not yet defined what we want the future of Durin to be. So I think before we just move kids around, we need to define what the future of Durin is going to be so that we're not moving kids and then having to move kids again and again, depending on what that looks like. So we wanted to push pause on this so that we could have a better vision of what the future of the school is, not just from a transportation standpoint, so that we're looking at multiple factors.
I respectfully agree. I think that's great thinking, and I appreciate that. I guess one of my concerns would be if we bring it up, why didn't we bring it up with all of those things in mind before we brought it up? When you think about the term starting with the end in mind, we brought this idea out that we will move these students into that school, but if we didn't do the backlog work to check to see what the renovations and things of that nature would look like, why did we bring it up before doing the back home work?
Yes, so
Because we may have gotten hopes up, gotten conversations started that should have been needed or that was not needed.
Yep, so it goes back to the double-edged sword. I try to put an idea out, take it out to the community, get feedback, do the research, the deeper research, listen to input, and then change. And then that sometimes can be perceived as, I'm just making ad hoc decisions, on the fly decisions. It's the double-edged sword in saying we're being iterative and we're listening. So we put it out there just as initial proposal to get initial feedback, and the initial feedback said pause. So that's why we paused. So I will need to be more reflective as a leader about, I feel like now I need to like curtail, maybe I don't need to be listening as much. Because when I listen and make adjustments, then it is seen as a negative. When in fact, I'm making an adjustment based on what people are saying.
Ms. Grabowski.
And I think, Dr. Watts, and this is, I'm only one board member, but to me, you're doing the right thing. Like, I think that we have to be understanding as a community that these conversations are complicated and they are challenging. And as we get more information or as other things, there are also domino effects that play into changes as they come along. So I, for one, and I'm just one board member, I do not want you to stop floating ideas, to stop listening to the community and making adjustments as we need to. You did that when you first came in and keeping Gould open. And that was a really hard way to come into the district, but that was all based around your willingness to listen to the community. And I, for one, would not want to see that pattern change. And I hope that we all as board members can help to be conduits of a process that is iterative, that yes, might sometimes be frustrating. And building consensus typically means not everyone is happy, but that we can live with the decision and moving forward. So I understand why you made the comments that you did, but I just have to put it out there that I, for one, would not want to see the process that you were taking. Because we just saw the great changes that happened with the recommendations. Because you listened. So anyways, from my perspective, please don't stop listening and adjusting in the vein of trying to do what is best for all of our students and our community in the long run.
I echo the sentiments of Board Member Denise Grabowski, 110%. I just want to make sure that I'm clear on my side. My side was not because you changed. It was, we made a change based on, we made a statement with knowing that the renovation was going to be needed. So if we did not know that the renovation was going to be needed when we made the initial statement, I would be okay with the change. But my concern was that we knew that we needed a renovation and we still made that initial statement. Therefore, we didn't do our backlog homework. That's my point of clarity. So I'm with you. I would want us to continue to change as necessary, but I would like for us to be more mindful, slow to speak when we are getting ready to make huge decisions. Hope that makes sense. Dr. David?
Dr. Brinkman.
Thank you. I was going to say, this is healthy. I mean, we're 9. We got different thoughts, we got different opinions, we come together, we work together. The fact that all of us feel comfortable, not just with speaking with staff behind closed doors or with the superintendent on a phone call, but at a meeting about how they feel things are going, I think is a sign of healthiness, even when it's uncomfortable, because most families won't even do this, okay? So let us all leave this portion of this meeting feeling good that we will talk about the things that matter because we care about them. I will echo as well Ms. Grabowski's sentiments on listening, because I was at that Gould meeting when you walked back into the Mr. Mole auditorium, and that was, I don't know the date, but it was pretty soon. You were still probably unpacking boxes. And I knew I had made the right decision in voting with these other board members to bring you in as our superintendent, because you sat there for a good hour listening to some very, very passionate teachers. and you went back to the team and thought about it. And there were so many times in that current conversation that you could have, as my family uses an outroduction, where you could have got out of that conversation. You could have, there were pauses, long pauses where you said, is there anything else you want to say? And I think if we went back to those Gould staff, they're with you because you listened. You listened on 208, and we all know how I feel about that. But you listened. So please don't stop doing that. There's going to be hiccups in listening. And there's going to be hiccups in this process when there's so many different parts moving and pieces moving and trying to make things efficient, but also being caring. And it's a tightrope. And sometimes we're going to fall off on one side or the other and teeter-totter back and forth. So keep going. And board members, keep advocating. I love it. I'm hungry, but maybe some of us, we feeling more because we get in the hangries. But I love that we're all able to speak our mind and still move forward. So let's all keep listening to each other so that we can support each other. And now we can say grace and go eat.
Yes. I'm sorry.
All right, so I'm gonna be as quick as I can. So what has not changed, so Hubert Middle School, we still are moving forward with that recommendation to relocate 46 students over from the Bonaventure area, from Hubert Middle School up to Myers. We did have a question about were these students or families previously impacted when we amended East Broad K-8 to be Formy, and the team looked and those were not impacted. So just giving clarification there. So our timeline is very important. So why is our timeline so important is because we have tried to be very comprehensive and include construction projects, renovation projects as well. So we started this journey in the fall for just talking about boundary changes. We started East Plost a little bit before that, but then we're now in January, so we will be getting your feedback, and assuming that everything moves forward, actually that will now be a February board meeting for that recommendation to move forward. That's not on the January today board meeting. And then spring, should the board approve it at the February board meeting, we will work to finalize those routing plans and communicate to our families, both our current families and those that might be potential families, honoring what Dr. Howard Hall said about the real estate and other community partners that can help us make sure we're articulating the correct message. And then in August of 2026, those new attendance boundaries would take effect. So recommendation will be seeking board approval of the revised attendance boundary adjustments. We will be providing those updates to our families and our staff, doing orientation for the families who have an opportunity to go to a new school. They'll get an opportunity to go in and visit the school, visit the staff, get to know that site. Then we'll start the process for the administrative placements in late spring. Again, finalize those routing and fleet plans and communicate.
Okay. Please tell me, we're done with the discussion, right? Good. All right. I will accept a motion to go into executive session.
Seconded.
Moved, seconded. All in favor? Aye. Let's go eat.